Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Nain's Shorts. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful day in the den of the wandering Ronin. Yes, the Bladed Mind Ronin. It has that name for a reason. But we're not going to get into that today, actually. There's something that's been weighing on my mind lately that I want to just kind of put out there and see what responses I get from the rest of you. Because we often talk about, as martial artists, this warrior way, this warrior mentality. We train with weapons, but the weapons themselves, at least for us, are tools to learn how our body moves, how to adapt, and even concepts and ideas on how to do the things that we do. But it's not the real world. We don't walk around with swords. Some of us walk around with pocket knives, so training for those might be a bit more on the realistic side. But more often than not, we're not going to have a weapon. We're not going to have the tools that we use on a regular basis other than our hands, arms, and legs. And more importantly, our mind. So lately I've been wondering how much of what I train would actually transfer into the real world. How much of it would be useful in an actual fight? And I don't know, because I've never been in a fight before. And for those of you who have watched previous episodes, well, I've said that a few times. I've never actually been in a real fight. I've been close. I've been in situations where my adrenaline shoots up and I can feel the physiological change inside of my body, and then trying to remember to breathe. Becoming a very important aspect of my training is learning how to breathe when everything else is going kind of crazy inside of you. But is that enough? Well, so far it has been. It's allowed me the clarity to talk my way out of a situation or avoid the situation entirely. But it still doesn't answer the question, would what I trained work? Well, the breathing part, yes. The talking your way out of a situation, yes. But that's not all that I train. So there's still a big part of what I do that hasn't been tested yet. And frankly, at this point, I don't want to test it. There definitely was a time early on in my training where I really wanted to get into a fight, and it was sort of an itch in the back of my brain that I wanted to scratch. It never happened, and I'm grateful for that, because in this real world there are real world consequences that have very little to do with the warrior mentality. And I don't know about you, but I romanticize a lot of the ancient world and the warriors that we read about now, the ones that survived and did great things, and just how awesome they are, and the way they're portrayed in media and other stories of fiction, because that's what they are, fiction at this point, because we weren't there. And we oftentimes, when romanticizing these things, we forget about the real fact that there was a lot of killing and there was a lot of dying going on, and these warriors survived that in a time where medicine wasn't as good as it is today, and many of them, even with a non-fatal wound, ended up dying anyways, but had something cool to say on their deathbed, and we remember them now. So again, that warrior mentality, where is it coming from? Is it rooted in ancient times? Is it rooted in the history of the art that's been around for hundreds or thousands of years? And how realistically can we apply that mentality now to the real world? Now, I've met a lot of martial artists in the few years that I've been training and doing these shows, and some of them, I would say, would be more on the modern warrior. Some of them used to be soldiers and are now retired, no longer in the service. Some of them corrections officers. Some of them are police officers that are still in the service right now, who do face those sort of life and death situations. Not all the time, but definitely are more prone to that degree of violence in the real world. And you have people who even work as security guard. Even Rico, now retired, was a security guard for a long time and faced a few situations. There have been bounty hunters, there have been security guards. All situations where you are more likely to find an altercation coming your way, not because you started, but because, hey, the people that you're after or the people that you're looking after tend to attract or be that kind of person that are aggressive enough to try to hit a person in uniform. Here's the thing though. Can we really consider that a real fight? Sure, you really had to defend yourself, but did you have any malice towards that individual? Did you feel the need to hurt this guy, or did you feel like your life was being threatened? Well, that part is probably very true because, well, yeah. But can you say that's a fight, or were you just doing your job? Were you just really good at your job? And again, how much of what you've trained actually came out in those situations and was useful? Now, there are people who are very high ranked in what they do and are very good at their art, and not just one but multiple, and holding ranks in those legitimately. Those people, I would say, could probably pick and choose in situations like that, when somebody's being unruly, when they have to calm somebody down, or when somebody's just flat out trying to attack them because they hold a position of authority. They could probably pick and choose what they want to do and have the mindset and the skills to be able to pull it off. Whatever technique it is they want to do just for fun. I genuinely believe that. I've met some of these people, and yeah, they really are that skilled, in my opinion. Now, has it happened to them? I'm sure it has. In their head, were they going through the idea of like, oh, I'm going to try this technique out this time just to see if it works on this particular individual? No, that conversation has not been had yet, but now I'm very curious to find out. However, not everybody is a high-ranked martial artist that is training. Some of us are a bit lower ranked, have been in our training journey a lot less. What would work for us? Well, first of all, at least for me, avoiding the situation altogether has worked out pretty well, and I have not had to test out this stuff as much as at one point I wanted to. I really wanted to test it out. But not everybody has that mentality. Not everybody was trained under that mentality. So there are some people who are still in the early stages of their training who are, let's say, a bit more aggressive in their mentality, a bit more gung-ho, are so just dead set that whatever it is that they know is going to work 100% of the time because that's what their master told them, or that's the impression that they received from their school and from their instructor, that they just start mouthing off. They feel empowered to a degree where somebody ticks them off just a little bit, it becomes a larger situation and eventually a fight. And who knows, maybe they win a couple of them, but eventually, is that really feasible, and is that a great way to represent your school? Now, if that's what your school teaches, then awesome. Yeah, get into street fights and win. As long as you do that, you represent the school well. But if that's not what you want your school to represent, if that's not what you want your students to emulate, well, then something fell short in the instructions, and or this person is just a complete and utter a-hole, and there's just no fixing that, or just stupid. And we all know there's no fixing stupid. But you have to consider, what is the mentality that we are then giving our students? What are we telling them through our actions, through the way that we speak, whether indirectly or directly? And oftentimes I think it's indirectly, because it's the interpretation of the student based on how we present information and how we talk about it that really gives them the impression. I'm an instructor. I've never been in a real fight. I've done a few stick tournaments and they were fun, but it's nowhere near that. And then for those of you who do tournaments on a regular basis, how much of that would you consider being like a real fight? Even UFC, once you get to that level where you're on TV, a lot of it is a paycheck. And don't get me wrong, these guys are monsters and great athletes and would fare great against any regular person. But are they really trying to kill each other? Probably not. They're very aggressive and they want to win the fight, sure. But it's still not to the degree where your life is in danger.
There's rules.
And there's rules. Not to mention somebody there to stop the fight from it going any further than, involuntary manslaughter. So there are things that aren't present there. There are things that are present there. So yes, it's a fair gauge to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, it's still their job to beat on each other. And for those of you who do it for fun and end up paying more out of pocket, well, you do it for fun because you enjoy testing yourself. You enjoy seeing how far you can go in a tournament. But nowadays, it is kind of costly to even do that. And that's what I'm talking about. How does that all translate into the real world? Because if you just go up to somebody and punch them, maybe a fight starts, maybe they just complain, maybe they just call the cops. There are all these things that can happen, all these rules and regulations that we have that will affect you negatively for testing out something as simple as, will my shit work in a real fight? And granted, most of us don't start fights. As martial artists, we are taught to walk away, to avoid, to just do everything you possibly can to not get to that point. And then depending on the school, depending on the mentality, if it gets to the point where you can't walk away, you go full blast. But most of us train very hard in the hopes of not having to find out how that ends up. And you hear this from some of the more worldly martial artists, at least when it comes to the world of the law and being able to stay out of jail. The calls that you make, well, one of them should be to your lawyer after an interaction or a fight or a self-defense situation, because you want to make sure that even when you talk to the police, that what needs to be said, what needs to be documented is, because it could be very easily skewed and become their word against yours, and without legal backing, you could become the villain in that situation very quickly and end up in jail. Not to mention the way things are right now, and those criminal mindsets that are willing to start a fight with you, are willing to harm you just because you're there, whether you are a person of authority or just a regular civilian. They don't care about that law and might go to a degree where they might actually take your life or attempt to take your life. And that is not a good time to find out that your knife defense wasn't good enough to protect you from that particular attack. And on the self-defense side, you even have some martial artists in states where it's legal to carry say that it makes more sense to carry a gun, even though they are so well trained, even though they have ranks in many different arts. They prefer to just carry a gun. And the simple reality is because the other guy might be carrying a gun, and no matter how good your kung fu is, can't stop bullets. So that's another aspect of the reality that we live in now. And how much of what we do translates well to that? How much of that have we actually considered and talked about in our classes with our students? The legal ramification of things, alternatives to self-defense beyond what we are learning in this class. And now I don't mean just walking away or talking your way out of the situation. I mean something as high as going as to having a gun. Are you even in a situation where that would warrant you to carry a gun? There are so many things in our world, so many different facets that we have to consider, and to everyone it's going to be a little bit different. If you are in law enforcement, that's a whole different mentality. If you're in security, if you're a bondsman, If you are just a store clerk at a grocery store in a bad neighborhood, something to consider. There's a lot of things that go on and a lot of things that I just don't know because I haven't been there and I can't speak on it. There are many who have fathers who were in actual war, whose arts were actually tested and it was passed down. But how much of that still remains? How much of that was lost in the process of teaching the next generation? Because they themselves have not been in a war, so can they truly understand what is being said, what is being taught? They've never really been in a fight to the degree where their life was in danger and they had to take somebody else's life. Sure, we can teach it as best we can because those are the things that we got from the instructors that came before us, but we don't know firsthand. So do we truly understand it, and would it truly come out in a moment where we really, really need it? I don't know. So I open the forum to you guys to add your own opinions and your own thoughts on that because I am very curious. I don't want to be in that situation to find out, but at the same time, I feel like it's something necessary to talk about for the sake of our students and even my own personal growth. So, thank you for joining me on another one of Nain's Shorts. I hope you enjoyed the topic. Let me know what you think. And until the next one, 3, 2, 1, go!